Hello, souls and demons, and welcome back. Today's story is part 2 of I'm a Warden Between Realities, written by Cecily, 1987. If you haven't seen part 1, I will place a link in the description below. So sit back, grip your seats, and enjoy. Now I will tell you all about the rest of the Chizar case. It's hard for me to admit, but I had made a grave mistake. I had neglected to consider Chizar's on-again and off-again mating partner. I had allowed her to trick me as she posed as a human girl. I could have easily broken her illusion spell with only a second suspicious look. My relief at finding a group of living children was so great, I never checked for deception spells, like I had been trained. Only the protection of my ancestors that terrifying night keeps me breathing today. Leilif of Clan Tongara. She was in a prison camp the last time I had run into Chizar, so I got used to him being alone. But the two had always been tight. They had a toxic relationship that turned deadly to anyone around them. Seems they only stopped fighting with each other when there were others to hurt. It was like they craved the act of inflicting pain. They amplified each other's vile nature. They pushed each other to kill. Now I was stuck between them. Leilif was holding a poison knife to my throat, and the massively muscled Chizar blocked the door in front of me. I needed to activate the spell on the ring on my middle finger. If I could rub the front of it with my thumb, the potent magic would activate and time would freeze for everything but me. The spell was a specialty of my clan. The time-freeze spell was only available to peacekeepers. It was powerful and extremely dangerous if not used correctly. Moving too fast without reciting the healing mantra in your head would cause all of your muscles to tear. My heart would be stopped during the spell. If I inhaled too deeply, my lungs would rupture. Gravity didn't affect me during the spell, so I wouldn't have to lift my leg, push it down, left push. The whole thing felt like swimming through a thick syrup. And the most important thing was to count in your head. Count to 3, count to 7 or maybe 10, before reciting the mantra to dismiss the spell. Things got more painful the longer you counted, more confusing. If you lost count or lost focus, your mind could be caught in a tailspin of a time-displaced psychosis, TDP. Your mind would feel trapped for days or weeks within the spell. The effects of TDP has been described as a week-long intense migraine, while being suffocated, while also hallucinating your worst fears. When you finally came out of the other end of the spell, you would be exhausted, completely confused, and a bit insane. But the spell would give me the edge I needed to sidestep the blade to my throat, and dart to slip around Chizar and get out of the cabin. As if Leilif was reading my thoughts, she used my knife to nick my ear. The paralyzing agent coating the knife worked fast, and my whole body tightened up. I let out a groan as my chest contracted, and I stiffened up like a board. My entire body buzzed like it was an electric current that ran through me. I would have toppled over like a toy soldier caught by a gust of wind, if not for Leilif steadying me on my feet. She let out a cackling laugh as she balanced me to stand on my own. My, Chiz. I've always wanted a copper back to play with. One to take our time cutting up, bit by bit. She spoke in her raspy, shrill voice. She walked around into my field of view. She laughed again as my face contorted into a toothy grimace from the poison. She was smaller than Chizar, with about my height, but she was lankier and had longer fur. She was obviously a female by her prominent curves and hips. Her fur was brown and braided in certain spots. Many bone necklaces were looped around her neck. One large ivory bone pierced her nose. But her face was narrow, cheeks sunken, and eyes too close together to be considered attractive by my kind. Maybe she had been attractive when she was younger, before she partook every vice from both worlds. She walked over to Chizar and he bent down, so she could rub his face against hers. She looped her long arm around his neck and turned to look at me languidly. Chizar sniffed at her and said, "Good to see you in your true form, baby. I can't stand the sight of humies." Layleaf reached down and grabbed the inside of Chizar's leg and watched him jump in surprise. "Maybe I can use the spell to look like a humie later, for you to punish me," she cooed at Chizar with a seductive smile. I felt like I was going to puke. As long as they were talking, the longer I had to come up with a plan. My mind raced and I felt like a rat in a cage. But this cage was sinking into quicksand. Finally, I thought of something, and it was a truly bad idea. Really a stupid idea. But it was my only idea that might work. I slowed my breathing and focused on my finger that had the time-free spell. The two killer lovers prattled on about something, as I tried to move all of my chi to my fingers. If I could activate my ring, time would freeze around me, but my body would still be functioning within the time bubble. My consciousness would still be intact, and so would my internal organs, so if I commanded them to work. I could intentionally lose myself in the spell, and endure hours or even days of torture, long enough to work the toxin out of my system. I would have to pump my heart and flush the toxin out of my body, so I would have to breathe and let hours pass while time was at a standstill. I said earlier this could rupture my lungs, but it could maintain them if I used my chi and mantra to accomplish it. This was stupid and extremely dangerous, but I had no other option. If I messed up, my heart would explode. This was true in extreme cases, but mostly victims of TDP came out the other end of having a stroke or a heart attack. But there was a way to survive without my heart killing me on the other end of the spell. There was a healing mantra for the heart specifically, I could recite while stuck in my mind. The trick was not losing focus on the mantra while my mind went through hell. "Wait, Chiz?" Layleaf inquired, cocking her head as she looked at me. "Why isn't the fur on his back copper like all the other law-worshipping bastards of the Bayut clan? It was copper the last time we fought him, wasn't it?" she asked, looking up lovingly to Chiz. Chiz smirked and let out a derisive laugh. "That's because old Locke isn't a blood member of the clan. He has a hang-around that kissed their self-righteous asses so much, they let him into the clan finally. That's why he is so little, and has that shitty dark fur," Layleaf cackled, and Chiz joined in groping her and pulling her close to his body. Chizar began marching towards me, bending over slightly to look me in the eye. He lowered his shoulder like he was coming in for a tackle, but I knew what he was doing. He was showing me the copper-colored fur on his back. He was mocking me. "It must tear you up inside, huh, Locke?" Chizar spoke, now only inches away from my face, his rancid breath filling my nostrils. The fact that I'm a true bloodied Boyat clan member, and I've turned my back on my pious kin. Then there's you, a clanless mutt that had to grovel to be accepted as a peacekeeper in my clan. Chizar was right about most of it, except he didn't willingly leave the clan. Chizar was disavowed and excommunicated by the clan when he was caught violating his peacekeeper duties. He was discovered helping criminal elements in the illegal trafficking of humans. His partner, a warden of great integrity, found out, and Chizar killed him. He earned the cruel part of his moniker when he killed his partner's family as well. He was trying to make it look like a criminal cartel had placed a hit on his partner's entire family. This was a common tactic used by a vicious criminal gang, known as the Shrouded Star. The only problem was, a child survived. It was his partner's young daughter. Chizar had left her beaten and in a coma. 2 years I protected the comatose cub from Chizar's secret attempts to kill the helpless witness. He'd hired assassins to kill the defenseless girl, but I protected her. We were always on the run, trying to stay ahead of the assassins. But Chizar used his connects in the clan to always find her. I had my suspicions Chizar was dirty, but I was an outsider, and Chizar was an honored blood member. So I kept the sleeping child alive until she awoke 2 years later. She quickly ID'd Chizar as her family's killer. That was 30 years ago. And now me and Chizar face one another once again. I had to risk everything to stop his murderous rampage through the realms. The surviving children would either be killed or forced into a worse fate in the breeding mills if I failed. Chizar's ugly face was smiling at me when I activated the time spell with my finger. The hatred I felt as I looked upon his scarred countenance could be a mental anchor I needed to get through the spell with my mind intact. I know I've introduced a lot of new concepts and information to you in only a short time, but please bear with me. I will try my hardest to interpret what happened to me during the time freeze. Later I can break down the theoretical usage of magic and how it works, but for right now, try to follow along as I give a crash course. I focused my chi on keeping my heart from rupturing. I pulled air in and out of my lungs by manually asserting myself, but the air around me was also frozen in time, so nothing fresh came in after 2 breaths. Thought and belief have a great effect on magic. Maybe you would call it faith. I had to believe I was breathing air in my lungs by reciting the healing mantra in my mind, even though it felt like I was suffocating. Like Schrodinger's cat, I was dying and being kept alive at the same time. My existence kept in balance by magic and my sheer force of will. It's hard to relate how long it felt while I was frozen, but it was terrible and seemed like an eternity. But as my mind began to hallucinate and my body screamed in panic, I focused on Chizar's ugly face. My hate would be my anchor. My mind began to dream, showing me the child Sasquatch waking up from her coma. I saw the tears in her eyes as she remembered the murder of her family. I had been around the cub's age when my family had been murdered. I was left an orphan without a clan just like her. I had pledged myself to the Boyad clan to be a peacekeeper, and they put me through hell to earn my place. But finally I became a warden, and I could help broken children. My whole life played back to me, but distorted and cruel, even though it had been cruel enough already. Finally, I came back to the point in my life where I opened the pantry in the cabin to find the human children hiding. But this time all the children were dead, their bodies ripped to pieces, their organs piled on top of their desecrated bodies. Kayla/Leaf stood atop the gore pile in human form. She was holding the head of the younger girl in her hands. The evil Kayla laughed the horrid laugh in Leaf's voice. The head of the younger girl, also named Kayla, opened her dead eyes to look at me. She spoke in a raspy voice. "Save us, Locke. Like a door lock. Save us, Locke. Like a door lock." As dark blood began spurting out of her mouth. The human child's bloody head slowly transformed into Chizar's grinning face. I once again realized where I was. I was standing in the cabin surrounded by bodies. I stared at my hated enemy and realized my body no longer had the tingling sensation of the paralyzing poison in my veins. The healing mantra repeated in my mind, like a record on repeat. I felt confusion spin back up, like a mental tornado that would pull me back into hallucinations and nightmares. I had to end the spell. I had to attack Chizar. I focused my mind to a sharp point, and mentally commanded the mantra to end the time freeze. At the same time, I thrust my right hand forward with all my might. When the spell ended, my fist had moved faster than the speed of light, to smash through Chizar's chest. It was as if my arm just phased through his massive chest to appear out the other end. An instant later, his blood and viscera exploded outwards, spattering Layleaf behind him. Coming back to reality from being suspended in time for what seemed like a millennia had immediate and dire consequences on my body. I was no longer paralyzed, but my body might break down anyways from the shock. The clap of a sonic boom shattered all of the windows in the cabin, and threw both me and Chizar apart from each other. Chizar barreled into Layleaf, and the both of them tumbled out of the doorway into the yard, as I was launched back to smash into a dresser, exploding it into kindling. My head pounded and heart raced, as I let out an animalistic scream of pure pain and frustration. My right arm hung limply by my side, broken in multiple places. Training had taught me to be completely still when ending the time spell, but in my confusion I had lashed out, punching with momentum at a supersonic speed. This foolish move had shattered my arm. I fussed and screamed, my mind still thinking I was trapped in time. I fumbled with a shaky left hand to pull a small glass vial from my belt. I crushed it against my forehead and let the calming ointment run down my face. I breathed its crisp scent in, helping me focus my shattered mind. Now that my head was back on straight, it didn't mean my body was holding still. I was partially embedded into the thick wall behind me. I was crumpled up in a sitting position, my back throbbing, my arms screaming with agony. I could hear Layleaf freaking out, outside in the yard. She was screaming and calling out to Chizar repeatedly. He must have looked like a gory mess. I couldn't help but smile in spite of my pain. "The hearts?" I heard her ask. I heard more growling and mumbling from Chizar before she replied. "Yes, love, anything. Just stay with me while I prepare the spell. Stay with me." This was not good. Layleaf was going to use forbidden blood magic to heal Chizar. The human heart could be used for a very powerful healing spell. I focused on listening for sounds coming from the killers outside. I could hear Layleaf pulling Chizar deeper into the forest, probably looking for a safe place to perform her healing spell ritual. I was already at a severe disadvantage before, but if Layleaf buffed Chizar with blood magic, me and the surviving children had no chance in escaping tonight. I had to think fast. I had to do something to tip the odds in my favor. I thought of my inventory of spells and magical items I had on my person. Most were standard issue to members of the Boyard clan. The most potent one was Time Freeze Ring that I'd already spent. The only thing left was my Amulet of Ancestors. The Amulet of Ancestors was what it sounded like, an amulet. I received it once being accepted into the clan. Once I became a warden. It was only to be used in severe instances, where a clan member was on the brink of death or a defeat that could cause severe dishonor to the clan. When the amulet was activated, it sent a beacon of invitation to all Boyard clan ancestors who had already passed on to the afterlife. Any ancestor could choose to come to your aid, or they could even to help. But once an ancestor lended you their strength, wisdom, and skill, it took a heavy toll on your body. You could be stricken with a chronic sickness, a loss of a limb, or even blindness. Requesting help from the afterlife always came with a heavy price. It was a last-ditch effort to keep yourself alive, but it still wouldn't be enough. I would still be outmatched. Chizar would be powered by blood magic, and Layleaf was an expert with hexes and curses. I needed something else to give me an edge. That's when I saw it. A human heart had fallen out of Chizar's bag when it hit him. It lay in a bloody pool on the cabin floor. The red organ tempted me like the fruit tempted your biblical Eve. It was against clan doctrine, and I would be punished severely. But it would work. I could defeat Chizar and save the human children. I had to eat the heart. I worked fast as I could in crippling pain, to set up the blood magic spell. I had been forced to learn forbidden magic as part of my job to recognize it and fight it. I had never once performed an illegal ritual myself, though. I had used chalk to draw a circle and symbols of power around the heart. I began my low chant of attuning magic into the dead heart. I was using siphoning magic from my chi to activate the magic within it. After a couple of minutes, I felt the heart awaken, and it began to pump on its own. I had done a crappy job and the spell would be weak, but I had no time left. I hoped even a low-powered heart could help me survive this night. I lifted the wet, pulsing heart to my mouth. If I eat this, it will put an end to my unblemished record. I had worked harder than any other warden to gain the respect of the Boyette clan. I would be eating human flesh of a murder victim to perform an illegal spell. Locke of the Boyette clan, I'm coming for you, came the loud, animalistic scream from Chizar. His declaration was followed by Leyleaf's cackling laughter. She had done it. She had healed him. I was about to die if I didn't eat the heart. I took a big bite of the gooey organ. I was surprised in how delicious it was. I shoved the rest into my mouth, eating greedily. I felt the magic pulsing within me immediately. A great heat spread from my stomach outward. My shattered arm bones melded back together. The pains all in my body winked out of existence. I stood up and felt alive. I felt perfect. I raced outside to face Chizar under the night sky. I watched the tree line with heightened concentration, ready for him to emerge. I saw a movement. Too small, too fast. I sidestepped an ATV being launched at me. It smashed into a parked car behind me. How had Chizar done that? Had he thrown it? My question was answered as Chizar came bounding out of the tree line. His frame even more massive than before. He stopped and looked at me with crazed eyes, drool frothing from his mouth. His muscles rippled and pulsed like the heart I had eaten. You're back on your feet. Good. It pleases me to know I made you compromise your integrity before I kill you, Chizar said in a deep voice, spittle flying everywhere. Chizar, what have you done? I asked in terror. I had never seen anything like him before. My Leyleaf is quite the witch. In the time it took for you to enchant one heart, she enchanted 5 of mine. 5? I repeated in a weak voice. His muscles continued to grow, and he now stood around 13 feet high. Don't worry about me, Locke, Chizar mocked. I feel perfect. This story is longer than I realized once I started writing it down. I'll leave you with all this new information to digest. Next time, you will experience how combat is between 2 Boyette clan members.